Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite video out here on YouTube. It's the iHeartSports Power Rankings. Things are getting intense around the MLB. A lot of playoff races, a lot of wild card tight races, and we have a couple of divisions that we'll get into that are super tight as well. Before I jump into it, please take this time to smash that like button. I bet if we get 15 likes, I will do an extra prediction video sometime during this week. Get that like count to 15. Otherwise, guys, let's jump into it. Starting at the bottom, we got the same team as always. The Washington Nationals 1-2 against the Mets. Got swept by the Phillies over the weekend. Not a lot to say. They're the worst team in the MLB. They sold. And yeah, Juan Soto's out of there. They're got a lot of rebuilding to do. Number 29, we got the Oakland A's 2-1 against the LA Dodgers, 0-2 against San Francisco. And yeah, Oakland A's, worst team in the American League. What else is there to say about them? They got a long way to go, a lot of rebuilding. They obviously sold a lot at the trade deadline as well. This bottom row, we're not going to have a lot to say, so we're going to kind of motor through it. Number 28, dropping a couple of spots. 3-0 against Milwaukee. Like, they did sweep Milwaukee Brewers. We got the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then they lost the series to Baltimore over the weekend. Big story here is, sure, they're like a 400 ball club, but their run differential has been brutal. For the most part, there's a lot of games where they just get absolutely obliterated. And I don't really see a good path for this team forward. They really still need a lot of help. And this division has two teams that are somewhere around the same record as them, with the Cubs and the Reds. And I see those teams being more contenders before the Pirates. So Pirates still long road ahead of them. Number 27, we got the Detroit Tigers 1-2 against Minnesota, 1-3 against Tampa Bay. It's been a long season for the Tigers. Not a whole lot again to say about this team. Signings like Baez and that in the offseason haven't really panned out, and they had a losing record this week with like 2-5, I think it was. But yeah, Tigers 27. 26, not too far ahead of them. We got the division rivals, Kansas City Royals 1-2 against the White Sox, and then they went 3-1 against Boston. Actually, the offense popped off pretty good against Boston, but I guess whose offense doesn't? Again, it's another one of those things. These two teams, they're kind of here, but I think in the long trajectory of the MLB, they probably have a better chance of making the playoffs in the coming future because their division seems to be pretty wide open. But at this point, we know they have no shot at the playoffs. Number 25, dropping a couple spots, the LA Angels 1-2 against Oakland, 2-2 against Seattle. Ohtani came out this week saying that, of course, the team's been losing. It's hard to come up and play baseball when your team's this bad. The one bright side for the Angels is that it appears like Trout might come back and play some baseball this season. We all know he went and saw the back specialist at some point after all that issues. But the Angels, they're pretty much far out of it at this point. And I think the long trajectory of this team is very much up in the air with what Ohtani's kind of saying. Trout, we know he's there for a long time. But how is this injury going to play out for the rest of his career? We don't know. Number 24, the Cincinnati Reds. 2-1 against Miami, 2-1 against Milwaukee. They won both this week, and they traded away a bunch of their guys. The future is starting to look bright, and some of these guys stepping up. They're still playing pretty competitive baseball, obviously, if they're winning both series that they played. And yeah, Reds got to be excited with what the future has to hold. I know they barely missed out on the playoffs last year, and this season kind of turned into pretty much a rebuild. Hopefully, with the division that they're in, they'll be competitive before they know it. Number 23. With the Arizona Diamondbacks, they went 1-2 against Cleveland, and then they actually went 2-1 against Colorado. So I actually meant to shuffle this up. So Arizona is going to be number 22, and the Rockies are going to be number 23. I was kind of waiting for that last game to finish, and Arizona ended up winning it. So I'm going to give them the slight edge of that. The Rockies, meanwhile, went 1-4 against San Diego earlier in the week. So really, they probably should have been below them to begin with. Both these teams are kind of similar, but also different. I am personally thinking that Arizona is more confident and more strong in the pitching department, whereas Colorado might be more strong in the batting department, both kind of being weak on the other side of things. If it were me, I'd be pretty confident if Diamondbacks can keep Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Bumgarner. They got a pretty strong rotation. The only problem with both of these teams, that kind of, again, coupling them together, they're in that strong-ass division that pretty much has them on the outside looking in, at least for a couple seasons at this rate. Number 21, the Miami Marlins, 1-2 against Cincinnati, 1-2 against the Cubs. They finally just had a big fall. I've been calling them average all season, pretty much keeping them here for most of the season. It's just coming to that point. They didn't really do much at the trade deadline, didn't bring in anyone, didn't really sell off anyone and bring in future prospects. They are losing to teams that I had ranked lower than them. And on top of that, their division just seems to be getting better and better, with the Mets, Braves, and Phillies all having great seasons. We got the worst team in the league in there, and then they're kind of the team that doesn't fit in the division. Long trajectory ahead. Marlins, I don't know what they're going to do. They're kind of stuck in this mediocrity. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Let me know what you guys think about the Marlins. Number 20, we got Texas Rangers, 0-3 against Baltimore, 2-2 against the White Sox over the weekend. Ever since hitting 500, Texas has kind of slowly fallen down the ladder of the power rankings. I think they're about 12 games or so below 500 now. Much out of the playoffs. The wild card race in the American League is very much wide open, but I don't think anyone at this point can consider Texas as a contender. They're in a division where they're right there in the middle. They're ahead of the bottom two teams. They're pretty far away from the next two teams. So we will see them take some steps forward, of course. In this past offseason, they made some big signings with Seager and Semien. We'll see what they are capable of doing in this next offseason. I think the only trajectory expectation for Texas at this point is to go up. Number 19, we got Chicago Cubs, kind of staying in that same spot as last week, 0-3 against St. Louis early in the week, and then they beat Miami over the weekend. And this is kind of why I like doing the power rankings, because coming into the weekend, Chicago and Miami were like right beside each other. So normally a series like Miami and Chicago would not matter to me, would not matter to most people, but to me it does matter because power rankings, right? So Chicago takes the series, they managed to knock the Marlins down a couple spots in the rankings. They managed to solidify their spot number 19. I do understand they basically have the same record as the Pirates and the Reds, but I do put them a little bit ahead of them, and I do put them ahead of all these other four teams, of course. But watch these Reds. These Reds are trying to catch up to the Cubs, and keep your eye on that down in the last 2 months of the season. Number 18, we got the Boston Red Sox. They went 2-1 against Houston before getting smashed. We already talked about it by the Royals over the weekend. Moved them up a couple of spots, but really they haven't improved much from this downswing they're on. It's just the teams that they're passing. I think long-term trajectory, not nearly as good as Boston. The division they're in, they're a little bit further away as well. So Boston, while in a heads-up match against these three teams, might struggle this season, I think the long-term trajectory and some of the all-star power that Boston has gives them that slight edge. Maybe we're going to see Chris Sale come back and make a big difference. Boston is quite a ways out of a playoff spot, though, and I don't see that really happening. Speaking of being out of playoff spot, number 17, San Francisco Giants 0-4 against the Dodgers. And then they beat Oakland 2-0 over the weekend, but they're 7.5 games out of a wild card spot, and that's quite a bit of games considering the teams that they're chasing are much better than them. I don't really see them being able to close the gap, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. Number 16, we got the White Sox. 2-1 against Kansas City, 2-2 against Texas. Kind of a little bit of 500, right? What was that, 4-3 over the week. They're 2.5 games out of a wild card spot and about 3.5, I believe, out of the division. So very much playoff capable. They just need to find some heat. And we're going to get to it soon. We got a couple of teams finding that heat right now, and that's what it's going to take. With 2 months left in the season, any team from here on up that starts going on 9, 10, 11 game win streaks is going to find themselves right there in a playoff spot. So keep your eye on that. Number 15, we got Tampa Bay Rays, 1-1 against Toronto, 3-1 against Detroit. So I'm keeping them in the same spot. They had a nice series against Detroit, and that's the kind of series they're going to have to continue to have if they're going to be in that wild card spot, which they are currently holding. They're currently holding a wild card spot, but based on number 15, that has me kind of projecting them as missing the playoffs. Pretty much, I think 13th is a playoff spot. We'll get to that in a second, but Tampa Bay, they really need to go on a streak. I think that's what's going to be needed if they're going to get in. Number 14, we're at Cleveland Guardians, 2-1 against Arizona, 2-2 against Houston over the weekend, and they're 1.5 games out of division lead, which is huge. They're one of the American League Central is one of those that maybe you don't need to go on a massive streak. I think the team that goes like 550, 560 win percentage over the season is likely going to win this division, and that's unfair maybe considering the American League East, but at the end of the day that team might be the 6th best team, so it might not make a difference. But I think only one team is coming out of that, so you better win the division if you're going to get in. And right now I have the Guardians on the edge, not quite winning the division, but they need that. They can get there. Number 13, we got the Baltimore Orioles, 3-0 against Texas, 2-1 against Pittsburgh. So they pretty much solidified to me that they're that bubble playoff team. So number 13, technically, I know 12 teams make the playoffs, but number 13 actually stands to be the 6th place team in the American League, which, congratulations, Baltimore. If the playoffs started today and we only went by power rankings and not record, you'd be in the playoffs. But the true test comes this week. They're starting it off against the Toronto Blue Jays, and if they're going to want to move up into this second row, they're going to have to win that series. They're going to have to continue their winning ways. I know they are the hottest team in baseball since July, but that start of their season really put them in a deficit, and they have to prove otherwise. They've been beaten up on the teams they got to beat up. I know they beat the Jays earlier in the season, but now that they're on fire, expectations are higher. They need to show that they can beat teams when it matters. They beat Texas, and they beat Pittsburgh. So I'm not putting a whole lot of weight on that to move them up to the next row, but we could see them there next week, should they put up another winning week. Number 12, we got Milwaukee Brewers, 0-3 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Cincinnati. So with 13th being a playoff spot in the American League, that means 12th for the National League technically is not a playoff spot because I have 7 teams in the National League in the top 12. And the Brewers have fallen quite a bit, and this week kind of was a stamp on top of that, losing to Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, both division rivals, but both teams that they'd been counting on picking up wins over and over throughout the past 2 years to really bolster their record. I'm a lot concerned about their offense being able to be a playoff team. The pitching isn't quite what it was last year to really carry them the way it had last year. They traded Hader off, of course, that was news for them. Right now I have them on the playoffs looking in. Number 11, we got the Minnesota Twins, 2-1 against Detroit, 2-2 against Minnesota. We've talked about the Central a lot. Minnesota right now is the division leader, holding on by the skin of their teeth. However, I do think that given how they've played so far this season, I predict them at this point to at least hold on to it unless things change, which all it takes is 1 week and things are going to change. You've seen the power rankings before. But yeah, they got a little bit of a lead. They split the series with the Jays. It was a really good series. I'll give them that. 2 games went to extras. They both split that. They were at home, so I still give a split series when they're at home technically gets the disadvantage. And I do think they're not as good of a team as the ones ahead. 11, holding on to that playoff spot by the skin of their teeth. We got the Twins. Number 10, we got San Diego Padres, 4-1 against Colorado. They went 0-2 against the Dodgers. They are the Sunday night game, which we know we started doing these power rankings before that game starts, and so that's the case right now. Padres, they are proving to not be the fire. They crushed Colorado early in the week after the trade deadline and all that stuff, but yeah, there just seems to be something with San Diego that they can't put it together. Dodgers clearly well ahead of them as a team. They're holding on to a wild card spot right now. We expect them, now that they have Juan Soto, we're going to see Tatis come back. That lineup's deadly, right? But we need to see it happen. And so far, we have not seen it beyond the Colorado series. But there'll be time. And, of course, they're very capable of being a top 6 team. I just want to see it before I start giving them credit, even though they made all those trades. Number 9, we got Toronto Blue Jays, 1-1 against Tampa, 2-2 against Minnesota. I don't know, like, they had a 500 week, and as a Jays fan, I'm pretty mad about it. I think this team needs to really turn it up a gear. Like, they should be the top wildcard team if they're not going to be able to catch the Yankees. And right now, I just don't see it. They didn't beat Minnesota in both series this year. They had a chance against Tampa, but they split that series, and now they got Baltimore. So I want to see them really come out in that series with a big win. Otherwise, my concerns are really high with the Jays. They have the talent on paper, but they just seem to not have been able to put it together this season. And yeah, that's where I'm at. Number 8. We got Seattle Mariners, 2-1 against the Yankees, 2-2 against the Angels. The Mariners having the edge over the Jays because they beat them both times. I like the way the Mariners play ball. They seem to have a lot more heart than it seems that the Jays have, and they're very clearly in a softer division where they should be able to pick up a little bit more wins along the way down the stretch, being able to beat up on Oakland, being able to beat up on the Angels, even though they went 2-2, but they'll be able to beat up Texas. You would hope that that helps them at least in the wild card race. So I pretty much expect the Mariners to take one of those wild card spots. Number 7, we got Philadelphia Phillies, 1-1 against Atlanta, 4-0 against Washington. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak right now, and things are starting to come together with them. And with Bryce Harper on the merge of coming back, this Phillies team is going to be dangerous. Albeit the division is stacked, and I don't anticipate them being able to catch up. But if this 5-game win streak turns into a 15 and the other teams just go 500, like, they're going to be right there at the top of the division. Keep your eye on the Phillies. I think it's finally time, like, after all these past few years, us thinking the Phillies are going to have that breakout season. This very well could finally be it. Number 6, moving up a bunch of spots, we got the St. Louis Cardinals, 3-0 against the Cubs, 3-0 against the Yankees. Just a massive week for the Cardinals, really putting some ground between them and the Brewers. So you got to be excited about that. The depth concern of the pitching seems to be okay, at least for now. I know Wainwright and them had a little bit of a beating today, but their offense came to play. So that's the kind of baseball you need. You need, when your pitching's not good, your bats to be good, and when your bats aren't good, your pitching to be good. Right now, the Cardinals are getting that. We're starting to see what the Cardinals were like last year down the stretch. They went on that 13-game, I think, win streak in September to sneak into the playoffs before they lost 1-0 to the Dodgers, right? So if they can get in with a division lead, they'll at least have a 3-game series this time around, and I'm pretty excited to see the Cardinals get in there. Number 5, same spot as last week. We got the Atlanta Braves, 1-1 against Philly. They went 1-4 against the Mets. So this weekend was the series that the Braves had their chance to make some ground up on the Mets, and the Mets just took the air right out of them. Doesn't change the fact that the Braves are very much a solid baseball club and a top 5 team. Number 4, we got New York Yankees, 1-2 against Seattle, 0-3 against the Cardinals. I think it's if it was a debate last week if the Yankees were number 4, it's pretty much solidified now in my opinion. They are a number 4 team. They just can't seem to get it going against pitching. And this week showed that against some top teams, they're losing. They had a losing week. I think this is the first time they got swept all season. Don't quote me on that. I'm probably wrong, but it feels like it. But yeah, Yankees got to be a little bit concerned here. There's some articles going around. Trade Montgomery. He's supposed to be the bottom of the rotation, but his stats are better than Garrett Cole right now. So like, what's that all about? We'll see. Frankie Montas in the picture now, right? Number 3, got the Houston Astros, 1-2 against Boston, 2-2 against Cleveland. Not much to say about Houston. They had a pretty average week, but they got, I think, a double-digit lead in the division. Playoffs are never really in jeopardy for them. The bye, I guess, is what would technically be in jeopardy, but I don't think so because they're going to win their division and the Central is going to be worse than them. So at the end of the day, I think the bye is pretty much a lock for Houston. They might be cruising along here, but they got to make sure not to stumble once playoff time comes. Number 2, moving up one spot, we got the New York Mets, 2-1 against Washington, 4-1 against Atlanta. The big boost here, of course, is DeGrom. We got to see him twice this week and today against the Braves. At least in the first 5 innings, when I was watching, he was lights out. Mets got to be super excited. This rotation is exactly what they were looking for, and the bats are getting it done, and it showed against the series against Atlanta. Otherwise, they'd be number 1 if it wasn't for this team. We got the LA Dodgers, 4-0 against San Fran, 2-0 against San Diego, 6-0 this week. I think they're on, I don't even know, they're on a big win streak. They're on 222 run differential plus. Like, they're just a massive talented team, and we expect them to be there, right? So there you guys have it, the power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment below, smash that like button. We want 15 likes, and I'll come out with a special surprise video this week. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.